The Journey of the Stars. Tables of minimum and maximum star declinations in the current precessional cycle. Giacomo Albano. This ebook aims to provide scholars with a list of the latest maximum and minimum declinations reached by each star during its precessional cycle. For the stars now close to a new maximum or minimum, the latter was considered, as it is currently the most effective from an astrological point of view. However, the reader interested in archaeoastronomical applications will find indicated not only the latest, but also the penultimate extreme declinations reached by some particularly important stars which have reached their last minimum or maximum in relatively recent years, and which therefore cannot be used for verifications related to the monuments of the most ancient civilizations. These are Sirius, the stars of Orion and Vega. Since my first publications in the field of stellar astrology, I have highlighted a factor completely ignored by common astrology, namely the extraordinary importance of the precessional cycle of stars for the most important events in human history, including the so-called sacred history, which has to do with the creation of new myths, cults and religions. Each star has a cycle of about 26,000 years whose starting point can be fixed at the moment of reaching its minimum declination. Within the annual solar cycle, we can associate this phase with the winter solstice. From that moment, the star slowly begins to rise in declination, until about 13,000 years later, it reaches its maximum declination. This is also a very important phase, comparable to that of the Sun when it is at the summer solstice. Stars in this phase of their cycle usually culminate at midnight on the solstice. For some of them, the climax at midnight can occur a few days before or after, as they are stars that do not exactly culminate with the axis 0 Cancer Capricorn. There are then two intermediate phases, similar to the equinoxes, which correspond respectively to the points where the stars are halfway between the minimum and the maximum declination, or between the maximum and the new minimum that will be reached at the beginning of the next cycle. The stars that arrive there are located on the equinox color and in that period culminate at midnight of the equinoxes. As I have shown in my books on stellar astrology, the stars that reach their minimum or maximum declination really have a particular power, even on ordinary earthly events. And this power extends far beyond that period, as it encompasses the whole precessional cycle of the star. In other words, it extends for 26,000 years. That is, the time span from the minimum declination until the star reaches a new minimum. Similarly, the maximum declination reached by the star 13,000 years later will remain a particularly sensitive point until reaching a new maximum, always 26,000 years later. In fact, each of these two moments can be seen as a starting point, even if the minimum declination of a star may be better done to coincide with the achievement of the minimum declination, since that moment the star begins its ascent into the sky. This means that the points on the horizon where the star rises and sets when it reaches the two extreme declinations also remain effective for a period of 26,000 years. What does this mean? It is very simple. The star leaves its imprint on that direction of space for this very long period of time, with the consequence that it and what lies along it will be powerfully influenced by the star itself. During its cycle, the star will rise and set gradually in other points of the horizon, but they retain this effectiveness only for the period in which the star is there. Therefore, they are less suitable for realizing orientations of monuments destined to challenge the millennia. And, in addition to having a much more limited effectiveness over time, they are also qualitatively very different from stopping points. Not surprisingly, even for the Sun, most of the monuments were aligned to the solstices. That is to say, its extreme declinations in these two particular days of the year. In other words, every star in these two extreme phases has greater initiatory powers, to the point that it can mark the beginning of new cults, religions, or the so-called mysteries, and can also foster individual enlightenment experiences. Ancient peoples, and in particular the Egyptians, were mainly interested in the sacred, the afterlife, the mysteries. They also wanted to build temples and pyramids that would last for millennia. Both are very valid reasons to choose as a privileged target for the orientations the azimuth of rising or setting of the stars at their minimum or maximum declination. And this was not only when the phenomenon occurred in those years, but also when it had happened many millennia before, since the influence of the star was permanently, some 26,000 years, linked to those directions. In some cases there may be traces of both the position of the star at its minimum or maximum declination, and of that which really existed at the time of construction. Recognizing these phenomena was not difficult, since these stars were the ones that culminate at midnight of the solstices. And to keep track of an orientation, as we have seen, it is enough to place a row of stones on the ground or build other simple placeholders that would also signal to subsequent generations those points. Moreover, it is known that temples were built on other pre-existing temples. And we do not know exactly until this chain of temples, or perhaps other simpler constructions, extended over the years. This list of the extreme declinations of the stars will benefit not only archaeoastronomy scholars, but also those of astrology and astrological magic, given the real effectiveness of these techniques. Their application in these fields can open up new research perspectives and bring to extraordinary results. Some of them have already been illustrated in the second volume of the book La Matrix Stellari. You can buy the ebook on Amazon, and it is advisable to read it together with the book Ancient Egypt, Jerusalem and the Stars, Archaeoastronomical Evidence of a Secret Sacred Astronomy.